This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
50 candidates have filed for Don Young's seat, big shoes to fill. Now the late, sad to say it like that, but Don Young. With that open seat, there's a special election. There will also be the regular election, primary and general, and they're somewhat, not necessarily tethered together, but in sync, at least in the primary in August, and a general for the special. Very confusing. We get it. Some folks, I think the majority, have filed for both. I think Hal Crow filed just for the special. Josh Revak, though, one of the all-stars certainly in the Alaska State Legislature, and someone not just of notoriety, but with a lot of support across the state, including Don Young. I think Josh Revak, if he would have run in 2 years, Don Young would have endorsed him. Josh Revak joins us. He has also filed for both, and I want to get into why he did both and what the process will be and kind of the whole shebang. Josh Revak, Senator Revak, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning, Tom, and thanks so much for having me. I always appreciate being on your show, and yeah, very excited to put my name forward and to serve all Alaskans.
The running mates, running mates the wrong term, the field, I should say your opponents, I'm thinking of the governor and Light Gov and the vernacular there, the field of candidates really grew enormously on Friday. Did you expect that? You were obviously one that everybody's been eyeing. I didn't think Tara would file, but she did. But you guys both chairs of Don Young's election campaign and efforts this year. Did you anticipate 50 people filing?
I don't know about 50, Tom. That's quite a bit. But, it's one of the beautiful things about our nation and our system of government is that anybody can file to put their name forward to serve. And I think that's a really valuable part of our system. I came from really humble backgrounds. When I first started working in Congressman Young's office to fight bureaucrats on behalf of Alaskans, I had to pinch myself. I never had ever in my wildest dreams believed that I would work for Congress and be able to fight for folks who needed someone to fight for them, and to work for such a giant, Congressman Young. And so now to put my name forward, it's been the honor of my life to serve in the House and in the State Senate. And so I think it's a valuable part of our political system to be able to have everybody put their names forward. And so, but I think, I think in the end, I don't know that there's very many veterans. I tell you what, I've served in combat. I've been wounded. I know how to fight. I've served in the House. I've served in the Senate. I know how to serve, and I think I think that'll stand out.
I think so too.
Forward.
You have Cracker Jacks like Tyler, who's going to help run your campaign, and of course my colleague in the industry, Art Hackney, who is reputable and have been around forever longer than me, and certainly has the win ratio and the talent. And yet, Art's the company that he hitched his consulting service to for some races. This Axios, I think it's Axiom. I've never met any of their folks. Suddenly, they say they're helping Nick Begich, and I'm just puzzled at that, how those things work. And then I'm kind of not puzzled. In your case, you are going to have a team that's Alaska-centric, it appears, and you're really going to, it sounds like, meet and greet and do what you can to connect with Alaskans across the state. That's what matters to you, isn't it? It's not East Coast firms or West Coast firms. It's Alaska-centric efforts, and I've always liked that about you.
I really appreciate that, Tom, and you couldn't be more spot on. We're all about fighting for Alaskans and serving Alaska. And, all too often politics is about money and about, everything related to that. And it's never been about that to Congressman Young, and it's not about that to me. What it's about is service to the state and fighting for Alaskans. And that's what we're all about. That's what our team is all about. And I tell you, I couldn't be more humbled to have somebody like Art Hackney. You know, loyalty was a big deal to Congressman Young. Loyalty not just to one another, but to the state of Alaska. And I don't think there's a bigger form of loyalty than stepping away from that to come and do what he believes in. And he believes in me, and by God, we'll fight as hard as we can. I'll fight for Alaskans, all Alaskans, with every fiber of my being, if they will give me the opportunity to do so.
Let's talk about delineating factors. When we see folks like Senator Coghill, who you and I both know and like, or Tara Sweeney, your colleague with Don Young's campaign, or let's say, Sarah Palin, who was the mayor in Wasilla and then ran for governor, and between lieutenant governor, she won some races and lost, but then had that light, quits as governor and then runs as the VP. She has a lot of stature. Some say it's going to be her in the pole position. The delineating factor point is, do you like to bring up the fact, and justifiably so, that your military service doesn't define you, but has helped steer your way and given you experience? Because the aforementioned folks don't have military experience, and many others don't either. I don't think Nick Bakich does. Many of them don't. It's not a criticism. I don't either. Wish I did. One of my biggest regrets, that I didn't serve some time in the military like you did. But do you think that helps really give you the experience and knowledge from past actions that others don't have?
I think that absolutely does, Tom. Three of the Army core values are loyalty, duty, and selfless service. Those aren't just things that we talk about. Those are things we strive to get better at every day. Certainly, I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody is, but those core values I've taken with me throughout life, and that sort of shapes, my desire to serve selflessly. A lot of people don't know it, but I actually took a pay cut to serve in the legislature. I was excited about it because, again, my heart is in service. I'm willing to sacrifice for it. My actions have proven that. My family wasn't as excited about that, but that really stems from military service and being in combat and losing friends. I was in a lot of combat. I spent 2 years in Iraq, and I tell you what, life is short and precious, and fragile, and so that causes me to focus even more on those core values, and one of the biggest being selfless service. And I think that matters. It does matter.
The Alaskan veteran population that served, like my father, in the Army, or that is currently serving, and then the Guard aspect and the reserve aspect. I think Dan Sullivan's in the Marine Reserves, and I think of like an Edie Grunwald. Politics aside, that I was disappointed to see she's running against Dunleavy, but who I support Dunleavy. But the fact that guardsmen like yourself, and I have a lot of friends in the Guard, Air Guard and National Guard, Army and Air, those folks can resonate with you at some level, at a deep level, or even at a partial level. Will you reach out to many of them? I think of the VFWs and the AMVETs and all those groups. I know you're going to reach out to everybody, but that's a core area that you can target, isn't it? Absolutely. I'm going to reach out to everybody who will hear our message, and as far as we can reach it. And I don't know if it's all right on your program. Can I say my website? I don't know what the. Of course, I thought you were going to start singing. You're like, I got a Steve Martin song. I'm going to pull out the banjo. No, of course you can. Yeah, well, so it's just joshrevak.com. We're building it here today, and it'll be live again here tonight. But if people want to reach out, I'm certainly easily accessible on Facebook, but we could use all the help we can get. And if folks out there want to help us spread our message, you are very welcome on this team. Yeah, to do that. If you can stick with us, I have three other questions, congressional related. The reason I brought up the veterans is that as a congressman, you would be representing them at the federal level. And we're talking about the Veterans Administration and years past, folks saying that maybe not in Alaska, but in other states, medical services lapsed or were not as good as they should be. That's one area. And then resource development, Arctic infrastructure, areas that if it was Congressman Revak, you would be representing us solely, the only congressman for Alaska should you win. So we're going to come back with State Senator Josh Revak, candidate for Congress. We'll talk about the difference in the special versus the regular election as well. Stay with us. Tom Anderson Show.
This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
We're back with State Senator Josh Revak, candidate for Congress. So I want to get into a few more things before we wrap up this segment. We'll make a YouTube video of this as we did the last time we spoke with Senator Revak. So, Josh, 4 areas. One, explain why you decided to do both the special. It makes sense, but I just want you to mention it to the folks so they understand. You and pretty much all of your competitors file for both the special and the general, so you would serve for 5 months to replace Don because he passed away, and then you'd be the newly elected congressman in 2023. You chose both, and then I want to get into Veterans Affairs because you'd be dealing with that in Congress, natural resource development, and Arctic policy. Those are 3 areas that I know you have expertise in and you care about, among many others. So first, let's go to the election. Was it a no-brainer to do both since you'd like to serve in both capacities?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tom. It was. We want to serve. That's what that's what we're trying to do, and that's the message that we want to send, is that we're in it to serve for Alaska in the long run. We're not just doing this to get our name out there. Right. We're doing this to serve. That's where our heart's at. That's where our heads are at, and that's what we're doing.
And then on the veterans, and then let's bounce to veterans because we only got about 10 minutes left here with veterans. You're an injured veteran, combat veteran, and there are folks with PTSD. You have dealt with this, losing friends, during war and after, and the suicide rate and the drug addiction, all these things. I know this is something that you've been advocating for in terms of help, support, funding at a congressional level. I assume you can do even more than in a state house or state senate level, correct? Because now you're dealing with federal budgets for Alaska.
Well, that's right, and this isn't something that's new to me. I've done this before. In fact, that's what Congressman Young hired me to do, was to fight for Alaskan veterans against federal bureaucrats when they were having problems, and that's what I did. I grew a pretty good reputation for being a fighter on behalf of Congressman Young in his office, and we had a lot of big wins. And it's hard, we were fighting a bureaucrats thousands of miles away, and without Congressman Young and his office and his staff, I wondered quite a few times whether or not these veterans would have anybody to fight for them, aside from our delegation, right? It was a team effort. But I have experience doing that. I have a lot, and a lot of veterans around the state, they know me, and they know me for my work. And, I will fight for Alaskans. I think that was a reputation that I built there, not just for Congressman Young, but worked for Senator Sullivan as well. And we won many battles on behalf of Alaskans. And the VA system, it's come a long way. There's still a lot of work to be done. I have friends, this veteran depression and anxiety and suicide is just crushing. It's soul crushing. It's affected me personally with people that I know and friends and loved ones. And those are issues that we need to tackle. There's a lot of work to be done, but we have made good strides towards taking care of veterans. And I was on the front lines of some of those positive changes. There's still more work to be done. Arctic infrastructure, Senator Sullivan's been doing a fantastic job. And again, all of our delegation, he's been talking a lot about why the Arctic is so important as it relates to our national security and defense. We have Russia had moved troops to their borders. They were planting flags up underneath the North Pole, China's building icebreakers, and we only had 2 of them, and one of them was broke down. So we're building some now, but into the future, that's going to be very, very important. And the Arctic is on the cutting edge of our national defense. And I think we need to continue our focus there, whether it be deep water ports, troops in Alaska, or other defense systems. And so that's very much where my head's going to be at. But also, I think it's important to continue focus on resources and transportation and infrastructure. Alaska is still a new state. We unapologetically have fought for a disproportionate amount of federal spending because other states, when they were new, they received heavy investments from the federal government for transportation. And so Congressman Young and our delegation had a big win here recently with infrastructure spending in Alaska, and I think that's going to go a long way. But into the future, Alaska is going to play even more of a critical role in our defense, and
the defense, Josh, it's linked, isn't it, to like transportation corridors and science and ecosystems up there, all the different elements that we've heard about, renewable energy processes, wind turbine, solar, hydro, all these elements tethered to the Arctic infrastructure policy narrative, and then you crosshatch that with natural resource development, oil, gas, all the things you've talked about, commercial fishing, timber, mining, and you're one that I think is a responsible person. You're not looking at raising it, like we see in the Amazon where they just cut it down and don't care about reforestation. That's something that you'll take charge of as well. You'll be a freshman if you win, but I mean, right, because of its importance to Alaska, I assume, and what you don't know, you educate yourself on, right? Because you've never said, "Hey, man, I know it all." You're going to learn.
And that's absolutely right. I'll be part of its education. Every 2 years, we get a new Congress, and we have a lot of folks from the lower 48 that they see Alaska on the map as a little state next to Hawaii in the bottom left-hand corner, and they just don't understand, and we see that time and time again. And so, we absolutely need to continue to educate those folks on why it's important. But responsible development, we aren't seeing common sense from the White House as it relates to this stuff. We purchased more oil from Russia last year as a nation than we were allowed to produce in Alaska. And that's just really sad. And they seem to, I mean, it's scary and dangerous too, because we produce our resources more responsibly than I would say anywhere else on the planet. I think we could have a reasonable argument about that. We're very responsible about how we do it. We care about the environment. But what folks haven't been talking about is that when we don't produce our resources here, we're not changing global demand. We're sending that resource production and demand overseas to places like Russia, and bankrolling them to invade Ukraine. And I think that's wrong. I don't think it helps the environment, and I don't think it's socially responsible. And I think it needs to stop. Another thing is critical and strategic minerals. The Ambler Road, we have strategic minerals that are very, very important, and it's the same thing if we don't produce them here. We're going to produce them, in places like the Congo where they have no environmental standards and they're using kids to do it. And I don't think that's very socially responsible either. And so we need to start having real, truthful discussions about what we're doing and what the impacts are related to resources. And we have it all right here in Alaska, and we can do it right.
We totally do. And you know what? We can undermine China as well, which is a communist nation. And when you look at, you're talking about rare earth elements, what is it, like 200 plus products? Everything from cell phones and computer hard drives. And I was reading flat screen monitors and televisions. Certainly devices and componentry in our military, which is unnerving to me that we buy that from China. So because they have the rare earth elements, I think you're spot on there. And with the Arctic infrastructure and with vets, those are areas that I think you'll have some clout in. When someone, last question, and we'll get Josh Revak back as he's on the campaign trail. Folks talk about who's conservative, who's not. I mean, what's conservative? Is it bombing an abortion clinic or sleeping in Confederate flag sheets? I mean, I'm a strong Reagan Republican. Do you like those labels? Moderate, conservative, hardcore, leftcore, this. I mean, you're Republican, but you're also trying to represent the state, and you know that there are people that are not Republican. So are you cautious to label yourself?
Well, I think we need to be pragmatic about this stuff. I mean, what if you ask, 5 different people what a label means, you probably get 5 different answers. And then I will tell you this, I will announce this on your show. My mom went into labor during Reagan's first inaugural speech, which was, so I like to say I was born into Reagan conservatism. And I think we need to have common sense about these issues. We need to be pragmatic about it, but we also need to think things through before we jump to conclusions. But I'm definitely a conservative thinker.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Josh Revak, good luck on the campaign trail, and we will talk to you hopefully one more time as you go through the labyrinth of questions and forums and meeting and greeting the public. So keep it up, positive thinking, and thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's State Senator Josh Revak, candidate for U.S. Congress. Folks, enjoy your Monday. Drive safe, and God bless.